Okay, so we're back in Yaakov. We're in Berachot. This section is called a Beracha commemorating miracles. Before I start that, there's a possibility that we're going to be taking Ein Yaakov and going to a Zoom style discussion course and stuff like that. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. But I'll continue here, and I think I'll still continue with the videos here on YouTube. But anyway, the Mishnah says, if you see a place where miracles happen to the Jewish people, you should say, "Blessed be he who performed miracles for our forefathers in this place." The Gemara asks, from where in Scripture is it derived that you should say a Beracha in a place where a miracle happened? Rabbi Yochanan said, because it says, when Yitro came to Moses in the desert and heard about the miracles of the Exodus, he said a Beracha. Praise be God who rescued you from the power of Egypt and Pharaoh, Exodus 18:10. The Gemara says the rule laid down in the Mishnah that you should say a Beracha in a place where a miracle happened applies only to a miracle that happened to the entire Jewish people. But you do not say a Beracha for a miracle that happened to you alone. The Gemara asks, but what about the case of the person who was traveling through a place called Ever Yemina when a lion pounced on him and who was miraculously saved? When he came to Rava, he told him, wherever you pass that place, you should say, blessed be he who performed a miracle for me in this place. Another such case, Mar, the son of Ravino, once was going through the plain of Aravot, and he was extremely thirsty to the point where his life was in danger. Miraculously, a spring of water was created for him, and he drank from it. Another time, he was walking in the marketplace of Nehuza when a wild camel attacked him. Suddenly, the wall of a nearby building caved in, and he was able to escape inside. After that, whenever he came to Aravot, he said the Beracha, blessed be he who performed miracles for me in Aravot, and also in the incident with the camel. Whenever he came to the marketplace of Nehuza, he would say the Beracha, who performed miracles for me with the camel and also in Aravot. The question is, how can our Gemara say that a Beracha is said only for a miracle that happened for the entire Jewish people? Here we have three cases where Berachot were said by individuals to whom personal miracles occurred. The Gemara answers, if the miracle happened to the entire people, everyone is required to say a Beracha. But if the miracle happened to an individual, only he is required to say a Beracha. What sort of miracles is the Gemara talking about? We learned in a Beracha, if you see the place where the Jewish people crossed the Red Sea, or the place where they crossed the Jordan River in the days of Joshua, or the place where they crossed the streams of the mountains of Arnon, or the place of giant stones, or the slopes of Bet Horon, or the boulder that Og, the king of Bashan, tried to throw at the Jewish people, or when you see the stone where Moses sat when Joshua waged war against Amalek, or the pillar of salt that was once the wife of Lot, or when you see the wall of Jericho that sank into the ground, for all of these things you have to offer thanksgiving and praise to the Almighty. Now the Gemara explains what miracles happened at all these places. It says, I grant you, we all know about the crossing of the Red Sea, because it says, the Israelites entered the sea bed on dry land, Exodus 14:22. The crossing of the Jordan does not present a problem either, for it says, the priest who bore the ark of God's covenant stood on dry land exactly in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel crossed over on dry land, until the entire nation had finished crossing the Jordan, Joshua 3:17. But how do we know that a miracle happened when they crossed the streams of the mountains of Arnon? Because it says, it is therefore told in the book of God's wars, et the have besufa, so et and have in the rear. So Numbers 21:14. The Gemara interprets the phrase as follows, et and have in the rear. So there were two lepers, one named Et and the other Have, and they were following in the rear of the camp of Israel. When the Israelites were passing the streams of Arnon, the Amorites came and made caves in the mountains which were close to one another, and they lay there in ambush. The Amorites reckoned, when the Jews pass down below in the narrow valley, they will be at our mercy, and we will kill them. And the Amorites did not know that the ark that was traveling in front of the nation used to level the mountains in their path. When the ark came to the place where the Amorites were lying in ambush, the two mountains moved together, and they came into one another, crushing the Amorites so that their blood flowed into the streams of Arnon. But the Israelites did not see what was happening in the streams behind them. When Et and Have came trailing the camp, they saw blood coming from between these two mountains, and they realized what had happened. they went and told the Israelites, who then broke into song. And that is the incident that is referred to in the verse, the outpouring of streams which incline toward the habitation of Or and leans toward the borders of Moab. Numbers 21:15. The place of giant stones, Avnei El-Gavish, which are these giant stones? We learned the word El-Gavish is interpreted as a contraction of three words, Al, Gav, and Ish, meaning stones that remain suspended because of a man and came down because of a man. They remained suspended because of a man. This was Moses, as it says, the man Moses was very humble. Numbers 11:3. And it also says, in connection with the plague of hail, the thunder ceased, and the hailstones that were in midair stopped falling to the ground. Exodus 9:33. Because Moses prayed that the plague should stop. And the hailstones remained suspended in midair. So later in history, these stones came down because of a man. This was Joshua, about whom it says, take Joshua, son of Nun, a man of spirit. Numbers 27:18. This is what happened. It says, while the Amorites were fleeing before Israel down the slope from Bet Horon, God hurled huge stones on them from the sky. Joshua 10:11. These were the stones that Moses had stopped from falling during the plague of hail. God saved these stones to demolish the enemies of Israel. The boulder that Og, the king of Bashan, tried to throw at the Jewish people. So for this we have no scriptural source, but we have a tradition. The giant Og, king of Bashan, said, how big is the camp of Israel? 3 parsi, about 12 miles. I'll go and uproot an enormous boulder the size of 3 parsi, and I'll throw it down on them and kill them. Og went and ripped out a boulder of that size and carried it on his head. But the Holy One, blessed be he, sent ants into that mountain, and they made the boulder crumble, forming a hole in which Og's head became lodged. Og tried to pull the mountain off, but his teeth extended on either side, so that he was unable to lift it off his neck. And this is what the verse means when it says, you broke the teeth of the wicked. Psalms 3:8. As Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish explained it, for Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said, what is the meaning of the verse, you broke the teeth of the wicked? Do not read, Shibarta, you broke, but Shri Vavta, that you extended. God extended the teeth of the wicked Og. How tall was Moses? 10 cubits. He took an axe that was 10 cubits long, jumped 10 cubits, and slammed that axe into the ankles of Og. That way he was able to knock him down, and he killed him. The stone where Moses sat, that's a quote, the stone where Moses sat, as it says, when Moses' hands became weary, they took a stone and placed it under him, and he sat on it. Exodus 17:12. Lot's wife, as it says, Lot's wife looked behind him, and she was turned into a pillar of salt. Genesis 19:26. The wall of Jericho that sank into the ground, as it says, and the wall collapsed. Joshua 6:20. Now the Gemara asks, we understand why the Beracha should be said over all the other events, because they are miracles, but the wife of Lot turning into a pillar of salt was a punishment. When you see that pillar, you should say the Beracha, blessed be the true judge, the Beracha that is said upon hearing bad news. Yet our Baraita says that you should say a Beracha of thanksgiving and praise. The Gemara answers, read it like this. When you see the place where Lot was saved and his wife was turned into a pillar of salt, you say 2 Berachot. For Lot's wife, you say, blessed be the true judge. And for Lot, you say, blessed be he who remembers the righteous. The righteous in this case was Abraham, in whose merit Lot was saved. So Rabbi Yochanan said, even when the Holy One, blessed be he, is angry, he remembers the righteous. For it says, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, God remembered Abraham, and he allowed Lot to escape the upheaval. Genesis 19:29. Or the walls of Jericho that sank into the ground. The Gemara asks, but did the wall of Jericho sink into the ground? It toppled over, for it says the wall collapsed. Joshua 6:20. The Gemara answers, since the height and the width of the wall of Jericho were exactly the same, it must have sank into the ground. The only way that the Israelites could get into the city would be that if it had sunk into the ground.